My name is Sarah Mitchell, and 3 years ago, I thought I had found my fairy tale. I was 28, working as a marketing coordinator in downtown Seattle, when James Harrison walked into Victrola Coffee Roasters like he owned the place. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with perfectly styled dark hair and a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo. When he accidentally bumped into me while reaching for his order, spilling my latte on my white blouse, I was more charmed than annoyed. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice deep and genuinely apologetic. "Please, let me buy you another one and pay for dry cleaning." That small accident led to a 2-hour conversation about everything from Seattle's housing market to our favorite hiking trails. I learned he was 35, a successful real estate developer who had moved to Seattle from California. He had built several luxury condominiums in Bellevue and was working on a major project in South Lake Union. We started dating, and within a month, I was spending more nights at his waterfront penthouse in Belltown than at my own apartment. James introduced me to his world: charity galas, weekend trips to his cabin in the San Juan Islands, dinner parties with influential people. 6 months later, on a perfect September evening, James proposed to me at Kerry Park with a 3-carat diamond ring. I said yes without hesitation. It was during the wedding planning that I first met the Harrison family in full force, and that's when the first cracks in my fairy tale began to show. James's mother, Patricia Harrison, was a formidable woman in her 70s who looked like she'd stepped out of a country club magazine. She had perfectly coiffed silver hair, wore designer clothing, and spoke with the kind of cultivated accent that comes from decades of money. "Marketing," she said with a slight frown when James introduced us. "How interesting. And you went to Washington State University? I see. Well, I suppose not everyone can afford an Ivy League education." Her comments were always wrapped in politeness, but the underlying message was clear. I wasn't quite good enough for her son. James's brother, Robert, was a successful investment banker who treated me like a temporary fixture rather than his future sister-in-law. "James has always been impulsive," he told me at our engagement party. "I hope this works out for both of you." James's sister, Caroline, was married to a federal judge and seemed to view me as competition. She would make subtle digs about my background, my clothing choices, my lack of connections in Seattle's social circles. But James always defended me. "Sarah is the best thing that's ever happened to me," he would tell his family firmly. The wedding itself was beautiful. We exchanged vows at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, and our first dance felt like the beginning of our real life together. Even Patricia seemed genuinely happy that night, telling me, "Welcome to the family, dear." It was during our wedding planning that James insisted we sign a comprehensive prenuptial agreement. "I know my family can be difficult," he told me. "I want to make sure that if anything ever happens to me, you're protected. I want to make sure no one can question your rights as my wife." At the time, I thought it was sweet but unnecessary. I figured we'd be married for 50 years and the document would never matter. I was wrong. The call came at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, exactly 8 months after our wedding. I was at the gym when my phone rang with an unknown number. "Mrs. Harrison, this is Dr. Jennifer Park at Swedish Medical Center. Your husband was brought in by ambulance. You need to come immediately." "What happened? Is he okay?" "He collapsed at home. We're running tests now, but you need to get here as soon as possible." At the hospital, Dr. Park sat me down and delivered news that changed everything. "Your husband suffered a massive heart attack. We're doing everything we can, but his condition is very serious. He's in a medically induced coma." I spent the next 3 days practically living at the hospital. Patricia, Robert, and Caroline all came, but there was something different about their demeanor that I couldn't quite identify. On the 4th day, Dr. Park called me into a consultation room. "Sarah, there's been no improvement in his brain function. The lack of oxygen caused significant brain damage. Even if he survives, he will likely never wake up. He will require around-the-clock medical care for the rest of his life." That evening, Patricia, Robert, and Caroline asked me to meet with them in the family conference room. "Sarah, dear," Patricia began in that tone I'd learned to dread, "we know this is difficult, but we need to talk about practical matters. James's care is going to be expensive, potentially millions of dollars. We're prepared to take care of all of that. We think it would be best if you step aside and let us handle everything," Robert added. "We can take care of James's medical care, move him to a private facility, Make sure he gets the best treatment. Step aside? I repeated slowly. You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you, Caroline said. This isn't really your burden to bear. You don't have the resources to care for him properly. We're prepared to make this easy for you, Patricia continued. We'll handle all the medical decisions, all the financial obligations. We'll even help you get back on your feet, find you a nice apartment, maybe help with a job reference. They were trying to buy me out, asking me to abandon my husband like he was a business problem to be solved. But I love him, I said. Of course you do, Patricia said, patting my hand patronizingly. And because you love him, you want what's best for him. What's best for James is the kind of care we can provide. They had clearly planned this conversation. They made it sound reasonable, even compassionate, but something deep in my gut was screaming that this was wrong. I need time to think, I said, standing up abruptly. Don't take too long, Patricia replied. Every day that passes is another day James isn't getting the care he needs. The war started the next day. I arrived at the hospital to find James's room empty. They had transferred him to Harborview Medical Center without telling me. His mother signed all the transfer paperwork, the nurse explained. She said she was handling the arrangements. I immediately called David Chen, the attorney who had drafted our prenup. Within an hour, I was in his office, learning the full extent of what the Harrison family was attempting. They're claiming there was a medical emergency that required immediate transfer, David explained. But Sarah, they can't legally do that without your consent. You're his healthcare proxy. Over the next few days, we discovered the family had been busy. Robert had petitioned the court to be appointed conservator of James's business interests. Caroline had contacted James's bank about account access. Patricia had told Harborview staff that she was coordinating all of James's care. They were systematically cutting me out of every aspect of my husband's life. But they made a critical error, David said, studying James's financial records. Sarah, your husband was meticulous about protecting you. Not only did he make you his healthcare proxy, but he also set up a trust that makes you the sole beneficiary and trustee of everything. David spread documents across his desk. You control the business, the real estate holdings, the investment accounts, everything. And look at this provision. If anyone challenges your authority, the trust authorizes you to use whatever resources are necessary to defend your position. There's more, David continued. If any member of his biological family attempts to interfere with your authority, they forfeit any claim to inheritance or involvement in his care. So what's our next move? We go to court. We demand that James be transferred back to your care, that you be recognized as his legal guardian, and that his family be ordered to stop interfering. Will we win? The law is completely on your side. But they're going to fight dirty. David was right. Over the next 2 weeks, stories started appearing about questions surrounding the young widow and her ability to handle complex business matters. Anonymous sources suggested I had married James for his money. Robert gave interviews about the need for experienced leadership. Carolyn started whisper campaigns suggesting I was keeping James alive for financial gain. Patricia gave a tearful television interview about losing a son and complex legal issues. But they had underestimated my determination to fight for my husband. The court hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning. The Harrison family sat with their expensive attorney, Martin Blackwood, looking like old money establishment. I sat with David in my best suit, trying to project confidence. Blackwood's opening argument painted me as an inexperienced young woman, unqualified to make complex decisions. The respondent is a 29-year-old marketing coordinator with no medical training, no business experience, married less than 1 year, he argued. When David responded, his tone was confident. This case is about respecting the clearly expressed wishes of James Harrison himself. He held up our prenuptial agreement. James Harrison specifically designated his wife as his healthcare proxy and granted her full authority over medical decisions. He established a detailed trust, placing her in complete control of his assets. He anticipated that his family might interfere and included specific language addressing exactly this situation. Patricia testified first, painting herself as a concerned mother with 40 years of nursing experience. Sarah is sweet but very young and inexperienced. I'm worried her inexperience could result in James not getting proper care. Under cross-examination, David was relentless. Mrs. Harrison, Are you aware that your son specifically chose to designate his wife as his healthcare proxy rather than you? James was very much in love. Sometimes when people are in love, they don't think clearly about practical matters. Are you suggesting your son was not mentally competent when he signed his healthcare directive? No, of course not. Isn't it true that you've never fully accepted your son's choice of wife? Patricia's composure cracked. I was concerned about my son. Any mother would be concerned. Isn't it true that you see your son's medical crisis as an opportunity to remove Sarah from his life permanently? That's absolutely not true, Patricia snapped. We are trying to do what's best for James. When I took the stand, I explained our relationship and James's wishes. He said he trusted me to make the right decisions for him. He said his family meant well, but they didn't always understand what he really wanted. Under cross-examination, Blackwood tried to expose my inexperience. How can you claim to know his deepest wishes after less than a year of marriage? Because he told me, I said simply. We talked about everything. You have no medical or business training. How can you make informed decisions? I can consult with experts. I can hire professionals. But I'm the one who knew James's heart. Isn't it true that you're fighting for control because you want access to your husband's money? I never asked James about his money. He protected me from exactly what's happening right now because he anticipated this situation. After both sides presented their cases, Judge Chen reviewed our documents during recess. When we returned, her expression gave nothing away. I have reviewed all the evidence, Judge Chen began. James Harrison clearly took extensive legal precautions to protect both his assets and his wife. The healthcare proxy designation is unambiguous. The financial arrangements are equally clear. She looked directly at the Harrison family. While I appreciate the family's concern, the law is clear. A competent adult has the right to choose who will make decisions for them if they become incapacitated. Judge Chen turned to me. The documents your husband executed demonstrate his trust in you and his anticipation that his family might challenge that trust. Therefore, this court finds that Sarah Harrison is the legal healthcare proxy for her husband and lawful trustee of his assets. The petition for conservatorship is denied. However, she continued sternly, the family's interference has been inappropriate and legally questionable. Moving Mr. Harrison without his wife's consent and attempting to freeze his assets are serious matters that may have triggered the forfeiture clauses in his legal documents. Mrs. Harrison, she said to me, your husband placed significant trust in you. I am ordering that James Harrison be returned to your care within 48 hours and that all family interference cease immediately. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Patricia approached me one last time. Sarah, I want you to understand. We weren't trying to hurt you. We were trying to protect James. Mrs. Harrison, I replied, James is still your son. I'm not trying to keep you out of his life. I'm just not going to let you run it. 3 months later, James Harrison opened his eyes for the first time since his heart attack. I was reading to him when I noticed his fingers moving. When I looked up, his eyes were open, looking directly at me. The doctors were amazed. They had expected severe brain damage, but over the following weeks, it became clear that while James had a long recovery ahead, his cognitive functions were largely intact. 6 months later, James came home to our penthouse. The first thing he asked when he could speak was whether his family had tried to take me away from him. They tried, I told him. But you had protected me. I knew they would, he said. I'm sorry you had to go through that alone. I wasn't alone, I said. I had you. Everything you had written down guided me. 6 months after that, James walked me down the aisle again as we renewed our wedding vows at Kerry Park. Sarah, you fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself, he said. You proved that love isn't just a feeling. It's a decision you make every day, especially when it's hardest. As I write this story 3 years later, James and I are still together. His relationship with his family remains strained but cordial. They understand now that I'm not going anywhere. The most important thing I learned is that marriage isn't just about the promises you make on your wedding day. It's about honoring those promises when they're tested by circumstances you never anticipated. James protected me with his legal documents, but I protected our marriage with my determination to honor his trust. Together, we proved that love backed by preparation and commitment can survive even the most devastating challenges.